Welcome, everyone. My name is Nate Stevens. It is such a pleasure to be here with you all for this, I think, really exciting and, from what I understand, timely training. When I initially heard from the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, I was really excited about the prospect of doing this in person with you all. Tahoe is one of my favorite places in the US, but I'll still enjoy it vicariously through you as we're doing this virtually. Just to remind you, this is, and actually, Phyllis, you're here today, so I'll turn it over to you to just remind us about the Community Foundation and give us a hello.
Okay, thank you, Nate. Yes, welcome everybody. It's so good to see some familiar faces and also some new ones. We so appreciate you taking your time on a Friday to join us for this. You know, we were last together for a capacity building workshop right in the heart of the pandemic when everyone was just scurrying around and trying to readjust. And we tried to come present some, very strategic business model, tweaks and things that you could do to work through that. And so now we're so glad to be able to somewhat be on the other side of that and to again listen to you and bring something that we hope is going to be extremely useful for you. This series on facilitation builds on itself, so we hope you're able to join us for all 4 sessions. This is in direct response, again, to our grantees know this, when we put out our application each year in our competitive grant cycle, we ask, what workshop topics would be useful to you? And so this sort of bubbled up this year of, how do we navigate this, sort of hybrid world? How do we make our meetings, more purposeful and inclusive and accessible to people? And so we looked to some experts in Washington, D.C. UFacilitate is the name of the organization. And so I'm very happy that Nate is here to be our, captain and through all of this and help us with it. And again, we feel like this falls right into our mission of connecting people and opportunities. And so this is our response to your request, and we hope it fulfills it and that we all learn a lot from this. So take it away, Nate.
Great, thank you, Phyllis. And it's just good for me to hear how this fits in as well as a reminder. So first of all, before I even talk about what we're going to be doing here and why we've asked you all here, just to introduce myself, my name's Nate Stevens. Like I said, Phyllis mentioned that I live in Washington, D.C. I'm an independent consultant in facilitation and collective impact. So I work with communities and collaboratives in communities across the country and around the world to really try to figure out how do we not just maximize participation, but develop genuine relationships and new ways of thinking and working together that go beyond the traditional ways that we've thought about participation. And for me, facilitation is not just a skill set and a toolkit that we can use to do that, but really a perspective and a worldview on how we can work differently. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I threw in this little map. I'm a fairly recent new independent consultant, and so getting all of my things in line, I was developing a map of just some of the countries I've worked in around the world, just showing a bit of my experience, but also I think what I found in leading facilitation trainings and community building participatory trainings around the world is how cross-cutting this issue is and how important these skills and this perspective is to all sectors of social change and at all levels. And so I'm excited to dig into it with you all and to get to know you all a little bit better in just a couple of minutes here. So first of all, for today's agenda, we're starting off with a welcome and overview, obviously. In a couple of seconds, I'd like to get to know all of you a little better and for you to have a chance to know who else is in the room. We had an initial a version of this training on Wednesday in Spanish with some of your colleagues, and so I've gotten a little bit of an introduction to some of your work and what's going on in the community. And I think we even have some participants who joined us on Wednesday who are joining today too. So we'll have a thread of continuity and some comparisons there. From there, I'll give an overview of what is this training that we're talking about. Phyllis mentioned the 4 sessions and that it's really a cumulative practical process. I'll give more context about what I mean by that. And then we'll get into a little ground setting activity. I'm going to introduce some polls and we'll start sharing a little bit about what are we doing here and what do we want out of this experience. For me, this is going to be a very participatory, you're going to be doing a lot of the talking and working. I'm going to try to be presenting minimally, but I will have a short presentation today, just a short piece of content really on what is a facilitative perspective in my experience. And then we're going to tie up the day, really round it out with practicing a core skill for facilitation, active listening. Something not new to all of you, I'm sure, in the work that you do, but a key capacity that we can always be practicing and honing and really thinking intentionally about how we apply to our work. And that will bring us to the close of the day. So to kick us off, we have about twice the number of participants in this session than we did in the Spanish session. So the one tweak that I made is just to remove one question from the participant introduction so that we can make these a little bit quicker. So what I would love is just, I'll go around and just call through, since we have quite a few people, I'll call people off going through my list. Just introduce yourself with your name and your role in the community. I say role in the community broadly, however you identify as kind of how are you showing up? What is the hat you're wearing in this training? And then the other question I'd like you to share is, if we imagine that a solar flare caused everyone's existing strengths to develop into a superpower, what would yours be? So I'm not asking for which superpower would you most like, invisibility or flight. I'm asking if your existing strengths were boosted to superpower strength, what would one of yours be? So I'm going to invite, let's see, starting here at the top, Christina Kind.
Great, thank you, Nate. I am Christina Kind. I am with the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation, and I am a coordinator for 2 of our programs, Mountain Housing Council and the Community Collaborative of Tahoe Truckee. And my superpower, I guess it'd be patience.
Very valuable one, and important for facilitation. Thank you, Christina. Victoria, Ferris.
Hi, I'm Victoria Ferris. I am a community health advocate and promotora at Tahoe Forest Hospital. This is a very hard question for me. I think it would probably be interpersonal skills.
I appreciate pushing through that difficulty, Victoria. I know putting you on the spot to highlight your strengths is a challenge. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Jasmine.
Hi, Jasmine Bro with Health and Human Services for Placer, Nevada County. I'm already a very stellar meal prepper, but if my superpowers were highlighted, I'd be able to snap and my meal prep would be done for the week.
I hadn't thought of that one before, but that would be such a time saver. Yes, amazing. Shannon Harney.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shannon. I work for Nevada County Public Health. I guess I would just be the funniest person in the entire world then.
Awesome. Good to know we have the funniest person in the world in the training. Thanks, Shannon. Sharon, how about you? Sharon Romack.
Hi, I'm Sharon Romack. I'm Exec Director at Sierra Senior Services, Meals on Wheels. And actually, I thought of this one too, Shannon, before you mentioned it. I think my superpower would be my optimism and sense of humor, which has really been stretched the last 2 years, but I'm holding desperately to that.
Good on you, Sharon, for holding on to it, and I'm sure it served you and your community well in the past couple of years. Heather.
Hi, my name is Heather. I am the program manager for SOS Outreach. We're a youth development nonprofit. And if I had a strength that developed into a superpower, it would probably be that I was friends with everyone in the world.
That is definitely a superpower, and one that I'm envious of. Great to meet you, Heather. Kate Frankfurt.
Hi, I'm Kate Frankfurt. I am the Chief Philanthropy Officer for the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation. I'm also the mother of a soon-to-be graduating senior from North Tahoe High School, role in the community. And my superpower strength, I think it's a combination of communication and integrity. So I'm not sure what that morphs into when you add a solar flare, but that's what I come with.
Some genuine communication, and congratulations on the graduation. Sarah Green.
Hello, Sarah Green, and I am the Executive Director of the California Trails Conference Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization working with state parks to host the annual California Trails and Greenways Conference. And I have a variety of other roles in the Truckee community. But my superpower would be enhancing my ability to inspire people and have hope for the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Gavin.
Thanks, Nate. I'm Gavin OSullivan, and I work with Placer County Children's System of Care. And specific for the Tahoe area, many folks are probably much more familiar with my colleague, Courtney Hallway-Kine, who is our wraparound facilitator for your communities up there. And the first thing that came to mind was I endeavor to see people for who they are. So thinking that individuals would just be super seen for who they are.
That would solve a lot of problems. That's great. Thank you, Gavin. Katie Ford.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I work with Sierra Business Council. There are a few of us in this call, so you'll probably be hearing that name a lot. I work as a climate and energy planner, as well as the Green Business Network Sierra Chapter Coordinator. So I might use this opportunity to plug the program. If you know any small businesses, reach out to me. I think in the last 2 weeks, my dog, she had surgery. So like my superpower for the last 2 weeks has been operating on little to no sleep. So that's what I bring to the table at the moment.
Maybe not the most enjoyable superpower of them all. Thanks, Katie. Laura Brown.
Sure. My name is Laura Brown, and I am the Executive Director for the Excellence in Education Foundation. We support the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District. And I would say, kind of been juggling different thoughts in my mind, but I think it would waver somewhere between like an elasticity and stamina. And I think some of that is the ability to stay the course, and then some of that is also out of necessity, parent of 3 kids, and just everything else we all juggle. So
those two together are interesting. Yeah, the staying the course and the flexibility along the course. That's great. Thank you, Laura. Shannon Decker.
All right. I hope my headphones are working. Suicide prevention and mental health education is my role in the community. And my superpower would be something that's served me well in life as a coping strategy, but that ability to withstand.
Which has also come in handy in the past couple of years, I'm sure. Jill Sanford.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see all these familiar names and faces. Jill Sanford with Sierra Business Council, one of our SBC cohort here. And my role is communications manager. And I think my superpower would be my ability to find common ground. And then just to make it fun with the sonic flair, like I'm just going to tie in a ground metaphor that maybe I'm also like throwing the ground around while I'm helping people bridge gaps and make connections, just to be a little bit more attention grabbing with it.
There's a Captain Planet element there. Cool.
Yes.
Great to meet you. Haley.
Good morning. I am Haley Damski. I'm the interim executive director for Conservation Science Partners. And I would say my superpower would be galvanizing the community to really create a plan on how to move forward effectively and cohesively.
Fantastic. Thank you, Haley. Heidi.
Good morning. Heidi Alstead. My role in the community, I've been an executive director for quite some time now, and most recently with Lake Tahoe Wildlife Care. I would say that my superpower would be that I'm a relationship builder. So I'm with Heather. I would be friends with everybody on the planet. Yeah.
You're going to be pretty busy, but
yeah,
it sounds
Heather
fun.
and I will be.
All right, great. Thank you, Heidi. Chase.
Hi, good morning all. I'm Chase Jamboreen. I'm currently the program manager for the Tahoe Prosperity Center, focused mostly on workforce housing, transitioning into a new role next month, which is bittersweet, but I'm excited for. And I think my superpower would probably be one of those disease detecting dogs, because I've got a really strong sense of smell.
That's another one of those that it's questionable about whether that's a gift or not. But
yeah.
good,
Oh yeah,
good to
with
hear.
2 little kids, you better believe it.
Okay. Thanks, Chase. Reyna.
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Reyna Sanchez, and I am a community health advocate promoter at Tahoe Forest Hospital. And my superpower is empathy and flexibility.
Awesome. Thank you, Reyna. Siobhan.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Siobhan Kenny, Director of Sustainable Tourism for Visit Truckee Tahoe. I think if I had an enhanced superpower, it would have something to do with endurance and stamina. I'm a trail runner. I also adopted a crazy dog a year and a half ago. And so I think I have a very high threshold to stick through uncomfortable situations, stick it out.
That's great. Thank you. Lizzy.
Hi, I'm Lizzy Hennessy. I'm a health analyst with Tahoe Forest Health System. And I don't know if it's a strength, but I have curiosity about what drives people, why people do the things they do. So I think if that could be solar flared, it would be insight.
I think that is absolutely a strength, Lizzy, and you're also anticipating an activity that we're going to do later in the session today. So stay tuned. Kaylee.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Reynolds. I also work for Sierra Business Council as a climate planner and some data analysis work. And I think I'm already a pretty hyperactive person. So I think being more hyperactive, I can get around real fast and get a lot of things done.
Okay, a mobilizer. Great. Let's see. Rebecca, I don't think you've gone.
I have not. Sorry, my internet's slow, so hopefully I won't break up using video. I would say, no, sorry, I'm Rebecca Williams. I'm the Sierra Nevada AmeriCorps Partnership Coordinator. So I'm working to support AmeriCorps members and doing the amazing things that they do. I would say my superpower actually is probably support and kindness. I'm also a mom, so I spend a lot of my time doing that. So I guess if a solar flare blew that up, then I would be here to support everybody and just offer support and kindness and help you all live your best life.
All right, so everybody in the Tahoe Truckee area, remember that. Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Let's see, who has Denise?
Hi, everybody. I'm Denise. I'm with the Sierra State Parks Foundation. We're the nonprofit park partners to the California State Parks in Tahoe. My strength would be that I'm curious about ideas and people alike. So if a solar flare was involved, maybe there would be like a mega mind situation where I would be able to hold all the information that I learn. And maybe finally then I'll also be able to remember all the names and faces of people I meet.
That does sound very valuable. Thanks, Denise. Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Holland. I am in public relations with the North Tahoe Fire Protection District. And while I wish my superpower was to be a dog whisperer, I think if I took my strengths today and had a solar flare, I think it would be empowering others.
Fantastic. Very clear tie-in to what we're doing here. Thanks, Erin. And then I think the last person, unless I'm wrong, is Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle Siegel. I'm the program manager for North Tahoe Truckee Homeless Services. And my superpower would be helping people set boundaries.
That sounds fantastic. We have a real superpowered group here, with or without solar flare. And I'm also realizing, Caroline and Phyllis, I'd love to hear your superpowers as well. Sorry, I didn't call on you earlier.
I can go. Phyllis McConnell, Community Impact Officer for TTCF. I guess if with a solar flare added, I would fund every grant request at 100% or more.
All right, we'll keep in touch, Phyllis. Thank you. Caroline, how about you?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Caroline. I'm the communications manager for TTCF. A strength that I already have would be staying calm in stressful situations. So I would develop that into a superpower and just help everyone get through those tough times.
Which would probably be pretty handy in the wake of a solar flare. So thank you, Caroline. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. I know it isn't always easy sharing our personal strengths. I appreciate who somebody early on mentioned that. But this is already, I'm getting a good sense of maybe some of our strengths as facilitators as well, which we'll talk about in a second here. Really quickly, before we learn even more about who's in the room and what brings us here, I just want to introduce and make clear the arc of this training over these 4 consecutive weekly sessions. The first one is, what is facilitation? I know it seems like maybe an obvious question, but I'm going to give some metaphors and ideas today that maybe it's bigger or a little bit different than what we've thought of in the past. The next session, I'm going to introduce what are some tools that we have to facilitate, and we'll be talking about hybrid facilitation. I'll be introducing some technical tools, but more so some menus of activities and some different ways that we can break down participatory processes and really be intentional with our meetings. The second half of this training, I would say, is where it's really going to get fun, because like I said at the top, I think facilitation, capacity building in general, but facilitation perhaps in particular, is really only possible to learn through practice and by doing. And so what I'm going to challenge you all to do, and we'll talk about this a little bit more at the end, so don't worry, is to come to the next meeting and over the course of these 4 sessions to really come with a concrete opportunity, either a meeting or an event or a convening or a part of a meeting that you're going to be leading that you'd like to go differently and that you would like to workshop in this training and really take advantage of this space. And so in the 3rd session, we're going to get practical and start thinking, all right, based on those first 2 sessions, how could we apply those to some of the things coming up and give some feedback, and we'll do some some simulations as well to actually practice and walk through some of the training, some of the facilitation approaches or techniques that you're interested in trying out. And then the last one will really be reflecting on all of that experience, whether or not you really grab onto the opportunity to use this four session arc to develop a meeting or an agenda or something. It's still going to be an opportunity to learn from others who did. And so we have a great number of people, 27 participants here. No matter how many people fully take advantage, we're going to have some rich material at the end of this 4 session arc to think about, all right, given what we've heard, what does this mean for us? How do we take this forward? What does this perspective mean? And that's the plan. This is something that in a perfect world, if we all had Phyllis's infinite resources and time, this would be a full week of full days, and we would be fully immersive. We're going to make the most with the time that we have. It's going to feel sometimes like we don't have enough time. That's okay. I just want you to know that up front. We're going to be flexible and make the most of the time we have. And I'm going to make sure that we're respecting your time, because I know that you're all busy people, and we have things to jump to right after this. So to help us move forward through this, a few proposed group agreements that I have. First of all, stay engaged. I know it's difficult. We're literally looking at our computers with the entire internet at our disposal. But if we can try to stay present as much as possible, I appreciate it. It's okay to pass if you need to. And I understand that many of us probably are working from home. So things happen if you have to turn off your video, but it's also nice to be able to engage and see each other, or for bandwidth issues, I also understand. I just got back from visiting my parents in rural South Dakota last night, so I understand bandwidth issues. Listen to understand. This is what we're going to practice today. This is a real concrete skill, but try to really listen to understand what people are saying, setting aside some assumptions or what we think they might be saying or what we expect them to say. One of the most important for me in all spaces is to be aware of the space you're taking up and that you're giving. So one way we talk about this is to step forward and step back. If you have something to share, maybe hold back next time to give other people space. And I'll be modeling how we can do that as well as facilitators, intentionally creating that space, which is another little plug. Throughout these trainings, I think it's really helpful to say, I'm doing this. Here's what I am doing, and naming the process. And so I'll be trying to model some of the things that the approaches or facilitative techniques, and we'll be able to reflect as we go. Be willing to do things differently and to experience discomfort. I think we all recognize that that's how we grow. We also heard from a lot of people that some flexibility and adaptability is already in this group. Expect and accept non-closure. To me, that just means, that goes back to, this is the real world and we don't have enough time. So we're going to do our best and we'll wrap things up and make sure that we have as much closure as possible. The point of this training is really to give you a little more confidence, to set you off into the world, facilitating the events that you're currently doing in your community. So what isn't wrapped up here, hopefully can continue in your conversations. And I know you have a lot of existing relationships going on, which leads to the last one, which is confidentiality. We're not necessarily going to be digging into particularly sensitive topics here, but we're also going to be talking about how vulnerability is a key part of facilitation and a particular strength as a facilitator. And so that entails, I think, a certain expectation of safety and confidentiality within a space. So just be mindful of that as well. Anything else that maybe we should add to these group agreements or that I might be missing? We'll check in on these in each session too. And so in the next meeting, we can see, okay, how do these fit based on the first meeting? And is there anything to add? Just to give you a heads up, a few of the technological, I guess, platforms that we'll be using, both to facilitate this training, but that are also some of the tools that I have found particularly useful in facilitating virtual meetings and hybrid meetings. Starting on the right, obviously we're starting out on Zoom. I think we're all fairly familiar with Zoom at this point for meetings and breakouts. At some point in the second session, when we talk about tools, we might talk about some of the back end things that are useful there. But I think it's more useful to introduce some potentially new things. So today we're going to be using Mentimeter, which is a site for live polling and surveys. Some of you have probably used it. I'm seeing some head nodding. There are many different polling platforms out there in the world. I'm not advocating for one in particular. This is just the one that I use. And the same goes for Jamboard, which is a Google product that is for group note-taking and brainstorming. There are also several other similar platforms that do that. So I'm not going to overly emphasize the technological part because of that I don't think there's one application or platform that does everything perfectly. And really, you should use whatever you're most comfortable with, and in particular, what your constituents and community members are most comfortable with. And so I'm ready to stop talking for a second, and I would like to hear a little bit more from all of you. And so we're going to actually use this Mentimeter. So you can do this a couple of ways. If you want to use your phone, you can scan the QR code here on the right. You can also open a window just on your browser, go to, and I'll put this in the chat as well, www.menti.com. And enter that code, which I'll also put so you can copy and paste. And while you're transitioning, I'm just going to switch my screen to the Mentimeter screen. You're going to see the exact same thing in just a second. So don't panic if you're not there yet. All right. So we can see a few people starting to come in. We have a few hearts. So far, you can just see this page. I will advance the slides. This is the nice thing about Mentimeter, is I can advance the questions question by question. We're all looking at the same one right now. Thank you to those of you who are giving the hearts of appreciation, letting us know you're here. I'll give you just a couple more seconds to transition over. If you're having any problems, just put it in the chat. Want to make sure everybody is coming along here, but we also want to make the most of our time. And so with that, okay, I'm seeing 20 plus people, which is my permission to advance to the first question, which is just this. When you hear facilitation, what's the first word that comes to mind for you? When you hear the word facilitation, what comes to mind? All right, seeing process. Okay, process is holding its own in the middle there. Inclusive, leadership, organization, help, ideas, more than one person. I like that. Listening, presenter, negotiator, cool. Idea sharing. Anyone want to call out anything you're seeing in particular here? Any surprises or reactions? The glue, I like that.
I like cat herder.
Cat herder, yeah. What does that mean to you?
Facilitation can have its difficulties, and that could be kind of feeling like you're herding cats sometimes.
Yeah, I assumed we all knew what that meant, but just to be safe, yeah, you can be, people are complex kind of by definition. So getting them headed in the same direction is a task. Help, solutions, assisting. This is great. And we will, yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just noting a lot of people have used a lot of different versions of collaboration, collaborative meetings, collaborating. Definitely one of those I think was mine.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. And I think that is so key. And it goes to something else that I called out, the more than one person. You know, I think when we hear facilitation, we can think of the facilitator and the maybe the one person who's at the front of the room. But we're all doing this meeting together. All of us are creating this meeting. So it is something that we're all doing. We'll take a screenshot of this to distribute it as well. So you'll see this. Phyllis, do you have a last word on this?
No, I was just gonna say, I like the vibe check, that, you know, kind of reading the room, whether it's virtual or not, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Vibe check is absolutely part of it. And it is different whether you're physically in the room or virtually in the room. It's harder when you're scanning the video feeds. This is great. Okay. Let's go to our next question here. When you think about successful meetings or convenings you have attended, so the ones you've actually experienced, what made them so successful? What makes for a successful meeting in your experience? Engaged participation, absolutely. Organization, listening, focused purpose. Yeah, we don't just want to be heading off into any old direction. Effective space holding, I like that. Clear goals, interactive elements, a facilitator who is evidently passionate about the topic. Oh, I think that, I love that one. And it's sort of subtle. That one's hard to express sometimes. Creating relationships before doing the work. Yes, applause for that. Intentionality, give and take. When everyone has a voice. Anyone want to react to anything you're seeing in these ones? I'll just kind of let it keep scrolling for a little bit. We have leave happy. I like that one. Showing people you are capturing their thoughts. Yeah, really showing people that they're heard. Elevation of the conversation to understand a bigger picture. So we need clarity of purpose, but also not getting so hyper focused that we lose the big picture. That can be challenging to balance. Openness to all possible solutions. Have a place to talk and feel safe. That's such an important part of this. I know the feed can be a little chaotic sometimes going back and forth, but really good stream of ideas here. Let's go to the other side of the coin here. If that was a list of, not that one yet. I double clicked. Okay. If we got a little sense of productive meetings and successful meetings, I'm sure many of you haven't had much experience with unproductive meetings, but for the limited experience you've had, what makes for an unsuccessful meeting? Rambling and unfocused. Yep. One person dominating. Frustrating and wasteful. Yeah. No empathy. Meetings that get hijacked. Yep. Any reactions or thoughts on this as you're seeing? I heard maybe someone come off mute.
Yeah, there's definitely that element that one person can really shift the entire experience.
So yeah, so what can we do about that is a question that that we'll leave hanging for now. Go ahead.
It's interesting. I'm actually having a very almost visceral reaction to seeing this. It's stressing me out because bad meetings are just really so frustrating and disheartening, you know, when there's so much that can be accomplished if you are able to have a successful meeting.
Sarah, I thank you for highlighting that. What I heard is that, I mean, we're talking about something experiential, right? So this isn't just like a transfer of information or something. This affects your whole day, how a meeting goes and how the energy you're left with. It's not just an enclosed system, right? Yeah, that I'm definitely hearing that. And I'm empathetic to feeling a little stressed out as we're watching these. Chaos, no action plan, only one person talking. I'm starting to feel it too. Any other reactions or thoughts on what you're seeing here? Angry of wasting my time. Yeah, so the meeting, yeah, like I said, it really can set off our whole day. I know I experience that as well when I feel like my time's been wasted. So let's not waste yours with this negative side of things. Let's turn it back to being territorial. I like that too. Remember that we're all co-creating this meeting, right? So I think these two responses probably applied to the one we were just looking at. So I'm guessing there isn't anybody who wants to get no purpose or chaotic out of this training. But how about this question? What would you like to get out of this training? As you're thinking about it, as you were coming in today, and based on what you've heard from me so far? So tools to redirect people toward the meeting and project goals, great. Trusting the process, yeah. And that takes, like I said, that takes some time and practice too, because it's trusting in yourself and your own perspective. But yeah, we're gonna work on that. Confidence to lead, confidence in facilitation, that's a big part of it. That was something we heard in the Wednesday meeting as well, that, you know, sometimes it makes me nervous speaking in front of people, that just that part of it is already a barrier. So how can we build some confidence around that? Architecture of what a good meeting contains. Awesome. We'll talk about that in our next meeting. That's one of the tools. What is a meeting structure? What's a flow? We'll talk about that. I'll also be referring to this list as I'm preparing the next 3 sessions to make sure that we're hitting on these and that we're able to cover. A framework to engage people at all levels. I like that. Any reflections as you're reading these? Agreeing on a shared language. I like that too. And feel free to engage in the chat as well. I know we don't always, we aren't all always equally comfortable coming off video, but yeah, go ahead. It might have been accidental. All right. Last chance.
Was just
yeah,
gonna
please.
say, like, you know, beyond the icebreaker, like, how can we expand our notion of like getting people to be present and engage? And if we are going to do an icebreaker, how can we make it not horrible so people are sad?
Beyond the icebreaker, I know it's like so many people have been we've been told that just having an icebreaker is the participation. that's all you need to make it participatory. But no, that's just to break the ice, and then you need to dive in. Yeah, thank you for that, Shannon. All right. Great. Thank you all for sharing that. That's going to be very valuable information for me as we're going forward, and we'll check in on how we're doing on touching on those things as well as we go. So right now, as I promised, I'm going to share just a few slides here. really talking about what is this facilitation thing. And as I shared with Reyna will remember from Wednesday, I talked about how when I give these trainings in Spanish or in French, when we talk about, when we're in a Romance language, my mom's also an English teacher. So thinking about the roots of words is something I like to nerd out on. Facilitate comes from easy. Facile means easy. So facilitating is really trying to make complex things easier. That's ultimately what we're trying to do here. You all have some skills that you want to acquire. You have some confidence that you want to build. That's kind of a complex thing to do. My job is to make that a little easier. I can't do it for you, but I can make it a little easier. That's the way I think about this. And I think it's useful as well to think about this in terms of this image of concentric circles. You could also think about this as, some of the, if any of you are familiar with network analysis, social network analysis, some of those maps that you've probably seen from Twitter or Facebook showing the connections between people and who's dominating conversations and influencing. We can think similarly about the energy, the influence that we're putting out into the world. Like we said, Sarah highlighted the experience of a bad meeting, that it really can jilt your whole day. We have that direct influence on people. So thinking about it that way, that if we are confident in ourselves, if we're leading ourselves, starting with the core, from there we can lead with others. And I like that it's leading with others, not leading others. This is a different perspective on leadership. A facilitative leadership style is different from a top-down leadership style. From there, we could lead an organization, and there it's leading the field. So it's this ripple effect in a very real world way. I not just because I am a facilitator, but I think facilitation really has that power to send out ripple effects in an intentional way. So I'd like to share right now just 8 facilitation principles, metaphors, ideas, and these come from You Facilitate. In my introduction earlier, I failed to elaborate on You Facilitate. Sometimes I do jump over things in my introductions. You Facilitate, like Phyllis said in the introduction, is it's a community of facilitators. And the one thing that I would add is actually that it's not just people in DC, it's a global community. And so it's a great opportunity for me to get to work with other facilitators in Kenya and Uganda, Mexico, as well as around the US. And so these 8 facilitation principles come from that community that they've put together over the past few years. Number one, the number one principle absolutely is starting with who. Who is this for? Why are we doing this? I have to have a decent idea of who's going to be showing up in the room. What are their expectations? If I'm starting with myself, my expectations, what I want to get out of it, I'm already behind. Absolutely starting with who. Just to give you a teaser, I'm not going to be talking about this, but for those of you who are interested, starting with who, there's a whole field and toolkit around human-centered design out there. If you Google human-centered design, I'm seeing some nodding, there's some familiarity with that. That's another toolkit that can be applied to facilitation. How are we designing for people, for the people who we ultimately want to impact? I like this, that scaffolding and structure is key. I like the word scaffolding here, that we're not really looking for, as a facilitator, I don't want a script. That's not going to be helpful to me because that's going to be limiting. What I have, this is my scaffolding. Oh, it's hidden in the background. This is my scaffolding for this meeting. It's an outline. I have bullet points. Some of the bullet points are just one word, just to remind myself, oh, don't forget that point. It's just a scaffold, the handholds for me to climb up over the course of the meeting. It's not a script. And I think that's important, especially for those of us who are less comfortable with public speaking. Having that script can be a real comfort, but it can also hold us back because we're less present when we're in the script. And that leads us to point 2.5, that what we're really, what kind of structure are we talking about? Some of you have probably heard this idea before from Dee Hock, the founder of Visa. He wrote about the chaotic path, that it's a mix of, we're trying to balance the chaos and the order, that somewhere in that sweet spot is where flow and creativity happens, right? Like we don't want total chaos. That leads us to despair. We don't want total order. We don't want that script, because that's rigidity. That's not going to be participatory. We're looking for this sweet spot, the chaotic scaffolding. Everything is a remix. I cannot overemphasize this principle. You see here the bad artists imitate, the great artists steal, attributed to Pablo Picasso, and Banksy, in typical Banksy style, scratches it out and attributes it to himself or themselves, who knows. This idea, I think, is really powerful. And one of the quotes I go to most from my graduate school was a professor who always, she was an organizational development and social change professor, and facilitation was a big part of her toolkit. And she always reminded us to cheat, steal, and be lazy in planning meetings, in thinking about processes, because all of the tools, all of the methodologies have already been developed and tested. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. There are websites and books. You don't even have to buy books. You don't have to buy anything to be a thoughtful facilitator. We just need a few websites, and I'm going to share a couple with you in our next meeting. It's good to attribute, definitely give credit where it's due, but I'm also not really into, I think ideas are kind of out in the world. So take what works for you. When you see things, if you're in a meeting and something works for you, use it in your own meeting. Pay attention to what you're experiencing, not just in this training, but in every meeting. What's working? Steal it, make it your own. Remember that this is an improvised performance. So this is also, improvisation is a capacity that we can build. It's not something that we're all comfortable with, that we come by naturally. Some people are naturally more comfortable with improvisation and making it up as you go than others. But that's ultimately what facilitation is. I have my scaffolding here, but I have to improvise at the same time. I don't know what Heather's gonna throw out. Maybe Heather's gonna throw out a curveball and all of a sudden I need to respond to that. We'll see, Heather, we're just getting started. But who knows? I'm improvising within the structure that I have. I think this one is actually really reassuring, that every facilitation is a prototype. Every facilitation, every meeting is a test. On Wednesday, I gave one version of this training. Some things worked exactly how I wanted them to. A couple things could have gone better, so I tweaked them for this training. And at the end of this training, I'll think about, and I'll get your feedback so that I can be mindful about how I tweak this prototype. Nothing is finalized, nothing is final. We have to be constantly learning and iterating in our facilitation. I think something going unsaid here is there's something about being present in facilitation, that we're not developing a master plan. We're not searching for something that's perfect. Everything is a prototype. Everything is a scaffold within which improvisation is happening. This one I have definitely seen be a real challenge for people, and I know that you all have as well in the past couple of years as more work has transitioned to virtual meetings, that it's really hard to balance the choices and trade-offs in meetings. We want to include everything in the meeting. We have so many objectives, we need to get everything done, and if we aren't conscious of all those choices and trade-offs, we're not going to get anything done because it's going to be too much. And yeah, like I said, there's only so much time in the meeting. This one I love. I think I'm saying that for all of them, maybe, but I particularly love this one. Bring your weird, bring your uniqueness Every facilitator has their own style. You shouldn't be trying to be, as much as you're stealing from other people, you shouldn't be trying to be like other people, because you're your own style of leader. And we heard a lot of the uniqueness that people are already bringing to facilitation. Christina's bringing patience. Victoria has the interpersonal aspect. We have Shannon and Sharon leading with humor. We have Heather and who else was it? Erin making friends with everybody. Reyna was flexible. We have Katie who can power through with no sleep, so she's going to be super prepared in advance. You all have your own strengths that you're bringing to the table. Focus on those. What do you want to bring? How can you bring your own personality into it? That authenticity is what makes people feel comfortable and like you're in a real conversation. Like it's not something that's staged. And this last one, I think, is just a really helpful, holistic metaphor. And it comes from, I'm going to forget her name again. I have a tab open, but it comes from a facilitator. I'll share a resource with her name. She's brilliant. The facilitator is midwife, that we're there to accompany. We're there to make it a bit more comfortable, reassure. Hey, this has been done before. We've been down this path before. I've seen this before. We're not doing it, obviously. The mother is giving birth, but we're accompanying. It's the same as facilitators. You're each having your own experience. You're doing your own thing. I can't force anybody to do anything, which can be stressful if we are thinking in terms of what we have to accomplish. But if we're thinking in terms of what we're there to help, what we're there to support others in doing, that takes some of that stress off. What do others want to accomplish? What are they bringing into the world that needs just a little support, that needs to be made a little bit easier? So just to start us off, 8 simple but powerful metaphors or ideas about what facilitation is. Start with the who, absolutely key and primary. Chaotic structure, that we're looking for scaffolding, not a script. Everything is a remix. Take what works for you and what you've seen. Improvise and perform. It's a prototype, so every time is a practice. How are you learning from your practice? It's all about choices. We can't do everything. Bring your weird and become a midwife to the process. How are these hitting you? Any reactions to any principles in particular as you're listening?
I was in a session a couple of months ago where the facilitator was like, there is no magic facilitation here. Like, the group is the magic. And in meetings subsequently, I just thought that was like really important to take the pressure off yourself as the facilitator too. You know, like you're not there to like make everything happen.
That's absolutely right. There's something kind of alchemical that happens, right? The magic is in the mix. It's in all of you being here together. I'm giving a little structure and pushing you in a couple directions, but it's not chemistry. it's alchemistry. There's something magical that's happening in the brew. Laura says she likes the midwife analogy. Heidi, being okay with improvising, and being okay with that being kind of a growing edge for a lot of us too. That just is something for more of us to become comfortable with. I see Heather went off, and then Laura, and then Chase raised their hand.
Yeah, I really like this list. They really speak to me. They kind of seem to align with when I feel like facilitation is going really well. Feel like this is what is happening. The one that really resonates with me is the idea of everything is a remix. I think that's when really cool things happen in facilitation, is being able to like take something else that it's established and done, and then make it your own and make it the group's own. And I think that's really my favorite part about it. And definitely looking at this list, I know for 100% certain, the one that is hardest for me is the choices and trade-offs. That's always the biggest struggle, is deciding to let things go.
Yeah. And that's empowering to know going in. So you've got it out, Heather, and now we can work on it. I also just want to call out something that Heather recognized, that, yeah, this resonates with what I've experienced and just needed a name for. I think naming things is one of the biggest contributions of a facilitator, is saying, is it this? I'm seeing this. This seems to be this. Just that is a major contribution to a group. You're all generating the things coming from your particular perspectives. And so from where I'm sitting, kind of at a 30,000 foot view, I can say, hey, it looks like that. I've seen that before. That looks familiar. Laura, what were you gonna add?
Oh, I was just saying, I liked the, well, the improvise and perform, but something you said earlier about not having the script. And I think something I have found where I've stumbled is sometimes I come into a meeting in my mind with the expectation of how it's going to go. So I don't mean a literal like written out script, but I'm like, oh, okay, I can pretty much guess what I think the outcome is, and needing to abandon that, because that's where, you know, like you said, it's that can stymie the process.
Yeah, and something, another level there, Laura, is oftentimes what we're coming in with are assumptions about the other people, right? So based on our past experience or based on what we think we know about them. And so, you know, if one of the goals of facilitation, like we heard at some point in your responses, is to create an open space, if we're coming in with those assumptions, it's already closed off, right?
Right,
Chase.
and I mean, like with meetings, or even sometimes, I know many of us, or executive directors or things like that, sometimes I think it's going to be an easy board decision, and it shocks me the things that trip people up, you know, where I didn't expect that one.
Absolutely.
So again, letting go of that script and expectation and letting the process happen.
Coming in, being open to being surprised. Yeah. Chase, what are you thinking? And then we'll go to Kate, and then I'll move on.
I'm curious to learn more and hopefully maybe get some tools as we go through this. Just with number one, starting with who, which in theory makes sense, but you know, there's times, I'm in one right now where I'm tasked with facilitating a meeting with people that I don't know, and even on a subject that I'm not an expert in. And I find facilitating those meetings way more challenging than something that I am familiar with and with the players I know.
Absolutely, Chase. And because that's what I do in most of my days, I very much empathize with having to speak on things you don't know very much about to a group you don't know. And yes, we're going to hit on that in more detail in the next session. Kate, how about you?
Sure. I think what I was thinking piggybacks a little bit on what Chase was saying, is that I think one of my great fears in you know, going into a facilitation is that the passivity of the participants. And I don't know whether it's why it happens, whether there's something that, you know, I always think, oh, what did I do wrong? You know, that I didn't engage the group and cheerlead them to get to action and, you know, get engaged. But I think there's a lot of passivity that happens in meetings, and that's very hard to kind of break through and get people talking and get people working together. And I think a lot of times there's a way in which the group will sort of abdicate all of the responsibility for the success of the meeting to the facilitator. And I find that challenging.
Thank you for that, Kate. I completely agree. And I like the way you phrased it at the end there. The group abdicates the responsibility to the facilitator, like get it done. And there are things we can do, and we'll talk about some of them. Obviously, going back to the naming of it, saying we're doing this together. This isn't going to work if we don't do it together. And obviously building the environment where that's received. But also one little trick that I just did a little bit, and that I did a little bit more on Wednesday, Reyna, if you remember. So we got to this slide and I asked, what do you think? And there was just a second of almost awkward pause, right? Where it was like, is anybody going to step in to say something? As a facilitator, I'm always going to have more patience for the silence, and I'm going to be more comfortable with the silence than the participants. And so if I can hold the silence just a little bit, somebody is going to be more uncomfortable than me and step in to fill it. And now we've got participation. So being mindful of, when we're talking about holding space, sometimes it is literal. I mean, maybe not literal, my mom wouldn't approve of that, but it's real that we just holding the line on who's going to say something. We just need somebody, and being comfortable with that and knowing that that's what you're doing. The narrative that starts in our head is nobody's responding because I asked a dumb question. This meeting's going terribly. They're not participating. If I can set aside that narrative and just hold the space, I'm doing my job. But it's that narrative in our head about our own assumptions, the story we're telling ourselves about what's going on that gets in our own way. So a couple of, or a few key capacities for facilitation. Phyllis mentioned, you've been doing capacity building activities. These are skills that we can really work on. So the one that we're going to practice in the last few minutes of this session today is active listening. How do we listen, not just to receive information, but to probe with our curiosity? We heard a couple of people, Denise and Lizzy, both mentioned curiosity about people and curiosity about process being their superpowers. Active listening is a listening with leaning in, and we're going to practice that in just a second. Synthesis, that naming is key. Being able to say, here's what I heard. Somebody can talk for 2 minutes and you respond with, here's the sentence that I heard. That is a major contribution to a group, being able to repeat back to them. Jill, I like that. Yes, that the idea of holding space for silence is also allowing people to step forward as leaders. That's right. And also you're allowing people who maybe need 1 or 2 more pauses to step in to do that. It's not just the person who's most comfortable jumping in. Hold the space for the person who needs 2 or 3 more seconds to feel comfortable stepping in. Improvisation, we've already talked about that, but that is a skill. People teach improvisation classes. It's something it's uncomfortable, but it's something we can at least become more familiar with, if not entirely comfortable with. Relationship building and connecting, we heard about some of those as strengths already. Same with flexibility and adaptability. See, I told you, you already have the skills that we want to bring to the table here. It's just about applying them and thinking intentionally. And then also, and this also came up, but bravery and purpose. I think the bravery, it takes a certain amount of courage to hold that space. It takes a certain amount of courage to say, here's what we're going to do, and to hold that, to be confident with that. Instead, rather than ask for any input or reactions here, I'm going to actually move on, because I do want to get you participating a little bit more as we round out the day here. And so the way we're going to do this is an activity that some of you are probably familiar with. It's called the 5 Whys. And it's an activity that's going to help us practice this active listening thing. And if I'll tell you what this entails in a second, but just feel reassured that you're not one of the groups that I'm making do 9 Whys, which is another way of doing this even more deeply, this activity. This is an activity that is very simple. Simple doesn't mean easy, but it's very simple. It's just an interview between 2 people with 1 person watching. So the interviewer starts with a why question. And the why question here is, why do you want to become a stronger facilitator? And the answerer responds. The interviewer should not say anything. No affirmation, no no follow-up questions, just listen. Because what you do next is follow up with another why question. Based on what you heard, probe deeper with another why. And you keep doing that until you've asked 5 why questions. The witness is watching all of this. You don't have to do anything until at the very end, just share with the two, what did you observe in their interaction? What did you see? And then switch roles. We're going to try to give everyone a chance to play each of the roles. We'll see what we can do with the time we have, but we'll do our best. So I'm going to invite, in the spirit of improvisation, I'm going to invite Phyllis actually to just role play with me what this looks like. All right, so I'll be the question asker, Phyllis, since this is the part that we're practicing. And if you could just answer for me. First, are you okay doing this?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for modeling. All right, so Phyllis, why do you want to be a stronger facilitator?
Because I feel like I'm in the deep end so often with this, and just kind of trying to keep my head above water with it and need a lot more skills.
Mm-hmm. Why do you feel like you're in the deep end with it?
Because I haven't had any formal training before, and yet I'm in very sticky situations at times where I need to be a better facilitator and feel like I don't have the tools for it.
Mm-hmm. Why are you in sticky situations? And you don't have to respond. So now we're already at 3 why questions.
Well,
Obviously,
sticky for me, so
yes.
I don't mind answering. You know,
no, don't worry.
Just again, feeling out of my depth and not being sure that I understand everything that's at play. So
perfect. Thank you so much. First of all, a round of applause for Phyllis. Feel free to use your reactions. That was modeling perfectly what we're trying to do here. So first of all, you saw how I was listening and forming why questions to probe deeper into what I was hearing from Phyllis. I could not go into that conversation with a script because I have no idea what she's going to feed back to me. The importance of this, I think we already could see in just these three responses, right? That the first level of response from Phyllis of why do you want to be a stronger facilitator was, well, I'm leading meetings and I want the skills and I want to do that. And then it got down to, even by the third question, we were already into some more kind of emotional stuff. Like Phyllis is in some sticky situations. That's different, right? We're already in a different heart space and we're listening differently already. So this is your task. I'm going to send you into breakout rooms with 3 people. It'll just be random. And I'll be moving around the rooms just to check in and see how you're doing. But I'm going to mainly leave you on your own. So before we get into this, are there any questions that folks have about this activity or how it works? And I understand if I see a couple of people had to get pulled away, understand.
How long do we have?
Roll. Excuse me, sorry.
How long do we have?
I'm going to give you about 8 minutes. So it's going to be a little rushed. Like I told you, we're going to do the best we can. If we don't get to everybody, it's okay. Remember that this is, at the end of this, you're already going to have a new activity. If you haven't seen the 5 whys before, you'll have a new activity in your tool belt at the end of this, regardless of what you get through. So with that, Phyllis, did you have something else while I set up the breakouts? Cool. So with that, I am going to, let's see how this works. Okay, I think we have the right number. I'm going to open your breakout rooms. Go ahead and sort yourselves out. All right, everyone, welcome back. And as promised, I bet you didn't have enough time to get through everyone in your group. But in the last couple of minutes here, before I let you go for the rest of your Friday, I'd love to hear from just 2 people who we haven't heard from yet today. How did it go? from whatever vantage point you participated, how did it go? How did it compare to how you usually listen, or the listening you usually see?
I found that I'm hopeless with putting hands up in a technical way. Is it okay if I speak?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Eliza, and then Lizzy will be next.
Well, I was in a room with Kaylee and Victoria, and they were great. And each one of us had a turn to do something, whether it was being interviewed or interviewed. And I found that when Kaylee interviewed me, I found myself needing to go deeper with my listening in order not to give all the crown jewels away at once. Does that make sense? So I was kind of taking role playing a little bit too seriously. And she was absolutely masterful in the way she answered the questions in order to take me deeper each time. And that I could feel that transition and feel it moving towards something that was truly helpful. So she did a great job.
That's great. Thank you for, you described that really beautifully, just what that experience was like. Thank you for sharing that. Lizzy, how about you?
Our group did great. What two of the people shared was that it kind of starts to feel weird just asking why. And so some alternatives that they shared were, well, how did that go for you? Or can you tell me more about that? So just instead of like, well, why did you do it then? Why did it, just some different verbiage, which I thought was really helpful.
Yes, thank you, Lizzy, for bringing up that this is not a recommended best practice for conversation. I would not encourage you to just ply your participants with why questions, but it is a helpful mechanism for just practicing the listening. That it is awkward, it isn't natural, but it does force us to listen, because those other questions, the what's, the who's, the how's, in the pyramid of questions, they're a little higher up, the details. If we can dig down, it isn't comfortable, but it's what requires the deeper listening. So I appreciate you pointing that out, Lizzy, and glad to hear about that experience. Okay, thank you. I wish we had more time to unpack this. We're going to return to this at the start of our next session, just to bring it back in. What I could use from you at the close here is just to head back to Menti one last time. I have one question, because I need your feedback on today. Because remember that each facilitation is a prototype. We're learning from each time we do this. So I need a little bit of your feedback in order to make sure that I'm on the right track and see what I need to do differently. And so I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. It'll pop up again in a second. Okay, so one last time. For those of you, it's the same mentimeter, same code, same QR, everything. But this time I'm going to just give you this question. Oh, and then I didn't change the Spanish one, I'm sorry. What this means in English, feedback on the day. The first one, so we have a scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree, left to right. And then the first one is, I learned something interesting or useful. So I'll just do these verbally. Thank you for following along. Then the next one is, I felt involved in the activities and discussions. And the third is, the facilitation clarified and guided the meeting. So I'll just read them again. Apologies for mixing up my Spanish and English slides. I learned something interesting or useful. I felt involved in the activities and discussions, and the facilitation clarified and guided the meeting. So this is just to give me a sense as I think about the next session. So I'll just give one more second here. I see people having to jump off, totally understand. We're going to remind you about this last thing over email. So for those who have left, that's okay. But for the next meeting, the only thing I'm asking is that you come with an idea of an upcoming meeting, an event, a convening, even just a part of the meeting, whatever, that you would like to go well and have more participation in. because that's the idea that we're going to be able to workshop and play with over the next 3 sessions. So if you could just come with that in mind, and we'll send this out over email as well so that you will have this, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or feedback for me in particular. Phyllis or Caroline,